nurturing God to give life to all things and long to satisfy our needs, even the needs of your children and their desires for healing and wholeness. Send your Spirit upon us this day, that we may hear your word, and in that word we might even meet Jesus, the one in whom all our hungers are fed. We ask this in his name. Amen. So we're talking today a little bit about health. Our ministry flows from health. So let's go ahead and test our pulse right now. And I've been talking to some professionals, and I guess it's somewhere here, right? Let's find out. Doc, am I doing this right? Checking your pulse? Oh, not 3 fingers, 2 fingers. Excuse me. Right there. And what are you finding out? Am I alive? Is there a heart in there? So, our spiritual health is important, maybe even more important than our physical health. And our physical health, we do all we can to take good care of ourselves. Some of you have already begun and even furthering the work of spiritual health by filling out that little sheet you received, the things I love about my church. Pat, have you had a chance to receive those? If you haven't had a chance to fill that out, it'd be a good thing if you do it. Jesus told a story about a farmer. He said this farmer was an astute businessman who did good work, had people working for him, made good decisions, and the rain came at the right time, and he had a massive crop. Such a massive crop that it caused a problem. He did not have enough room in his silos for the crop that was to be harvested, and that caused a little tension. So he had a discussion with his farm hands. They talked about it, and one evening he sat and considered what he might do. One thought would be to, not worry about storing the grain, but go ahead and sell it right now. And then he did the math. Well, the price of grain right now, what everybody is harvesting, is not all that good. If you sold right now, that's not a good business decision. So no, selling it now is not good. That's not a good idea. How about just selling what I could sell and give the rest away? Thought about that for a while. No, give the rest away. And that probably will reward people for being lazy and not working. That will not be good. So no, let's not do that. And then he said, I have it. I have it. What I need to do is tear down my silos, my barns. They're too small. That's the problem. They're too small. And build bigger ones. Enough room. And then he said, then I will tell my soul, I will say to myself, now take it easy, put your feet up, drink, be merry, enjoy. Having sorted out that very difficult dilemma, he poured himself a glass of wine, a little relaxation before bed. And there was a knock at the door. Somebody at the door. Servants in the house, somebody ran to the door. He came back ashen in the face. Master, he said, death is at the door, and he has come for you. Jesus adds, so will it be for all those who are abundant in wealth, but poor towards God. Those who are abundant in wealth, but poor towards God. The Apostle Paul talked about health a lot, spiritual health. Obviously, this farmer did not have much spiritual health. Paul talked about spiritual health a great deal, and he wrote a letter to the young pastor Timothy, who was a pastor of a church in Ephesus. And he was teaching him about some of the things that contribute to spiritual health. Pat, would you be willing to rise up and read that text for us?
All right, this text is actually in your bulletin, I think, on the back side of it. Let me follow along with me as I read. 1 Timothy 6, verses 17 through 19. Tell people who are rich at this time not to become egotistical and not to place their hope on their finances, which are uncertain. Instead, they need to hope in God, who richly provides everything for our enjoyment. Tell them to do good, to be rich in the good things they do, to be generous, and to share with others. When they do these things, they will save a treasure for themselves that is a good foundation for the future. That way, they can take hold of what is truly life.
Thank you, Pat. So Paul had some thoughts for Timothy. I want you, Timothy, to instruct, to command, he said, to teach those who are rich at this present time. Now, in the Greek, it says rich at this present age. Age is not the same as time. There are two eras we are dealing with. If we'll take the time to look at that. This present age and the age to come. The present age is the time within which we live. And somehow God has decided to crash into the present age with the age to come. And the age to come was ushered by Jesus of Nazareth. In his life, death, and resurrection, he ushered the age to come into the present age. Everybody with me so far? So Easter and Christmas is a big deal because we are convinced, Paul says, that God became human. God became human, the Word became flesh and lived among us, and that person was who? Jesus Christ. And here's our conviction, Paul says, that this Jesus lived most clearly what life is supposed to be about. Right? His teaching, his life, how he lived it, how he related to people, that this Jesus demonstrated most clearly what life is supposed to be about. In other words, God says, okay, I'll send you a specimen. I've put it in the Word, the Old Testament, the long text, and it all gets upside down, and okay, I like this part, I don't like this part. God says, I'll come and I will just demonstrate just what it's supposed to look like. So that's a Christian conviction. Paul says we live in a present age and there is an age to come. That's at the core of what we're talking about today. The question is, does anybody actually believe that? Do we actually believe that there is an age to come? Do we believe that this Jesus who lived and died and was raised from the dead will actually come to judge the living and the dead? Do we actually believe that? Because that's the seed for everything else. Do you actually believe it? Do you believe that this Son of God who came to live and die and was raised from the dead, do you believe that he has ushered in what we call the kingdom of God? And that kingdom is among us and within us? And that you and I are called into partnership with this kingdom to press out that good news of the love of God? Do you believe that? If you don't believe that, we can do church all day. Amen? We can do church all day. That's niceties, that's neighborly, that's get together, that's have a nice time, that's sing some songs. We can do that all day. Nothing will change in the world. That's entertainment. That's fun. That's great. You can have that in all sorts of places. But what we call the church of Jesus Christ, the body of Christ, it's not about entertainment. You can get better entertainment at the Memorial Auditorium. You can get into your car and drive to Kansas City and be entertained. You can go to Las Vegas and be entertained. The Church of Jesus Christ at core is about something else. The question is, do we believe that core message? That God has come among us in this present age, and in Jesus Christ, what life is supposed to be about has been made there. And we are called to follow in his footsteps. That's what this is about. And Paul says to Timothy, teach them in the church, those who are rich in this present age. There's an age to come, there is this present age, and there are some of us that are rich. Actually, can I tell you the truth? Pretty much all of us are rich. In the United States, my goodness, are you kidding? Who is worried about their next meal? Here. Most of us have more than one car in the garage. Most of us have deep freezers in the basement. I mean, we are rich in the United States of America for the most part. So he says, those that are rich in this present day, teach them a couple of things. What did he say according to your text? It says, first of all, teach them not to be arrogant. Teach them not to be arrogant. Teach them not to be egotistical. What does it mean to be arrogant? Well, to be arrogant means to be filled with oneself. This is a self of self-importance. This is as in, do you have any idea who you're dealing with here? Do you know who you're dealing with here? That's the idea. And how do we get to that place? Because the fact is, money is power. Wealth is power. I mean, we're kidding ourselves if we don't admit it. With wealth, you decide whether you can afford that house or that house, right? And if you can afford that house, perhaps that means that you also get to live in a certain neighborhood that has a certain access to certain amenities. Are you with me so far? Where you live also determines where your kids go to school. That is setting them up for the next 20 years. Guess who's going to get a good job? Those that got the education. Money is power. And when there's that much power, it's not too hard to get a little big-headed. When you have the influence and access to power, it's not too hard to get full of yourself. So Paul says, Timothy, I want you to teach them not to be arrogant. Teach them not to be arrogant. He also says, teach them not to put hope in the uncertainty of wealth. Not to trust the uncertainty of riches. Now, there's nothing wrong with riches. My goodness, everything has to be paid for, correct? We've got chicken here. It's not free. I raise the chicken free? No. It has to be paid for. And I gave her the number 5, and today I'm going to update it to 10, and it has to be paid for. She says she trusts me. I brought money for her. Somebody calls the church office and says, hey, I'm in crisis. I am hurting. You know, I've been kicked out of my house, and we are in a domestic abuse situation. I can get on the phone and I can pray with them. And that's nice. And after that, the phone gets a little bit quiet on the other side, and Pastor, is there anything else? Is there a phone number you can give me? Something. It costs money. It costs something. So Paul says, listen, funds, cash, wealth is uncertain. So don't put your hope on it. How do we know it's uncertain? Anybody remember Bernard Madoff? I mean, he made off quite a bit, didn't he? I read that one in the book somewhere. Serious illness, right? Serious illness. My goodness, the phone rings and your whole world changes. It's uncertain. Our riches are uncertain. And even if you have it, you don't quite know whether you get to hold on to it or not. So instead, he says, put your hope your confidence in God. Now, how exactly am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to put my confidence in God? Is it just talk? What are the practices that helps me put my confidence in God? A couple of thoughts in the text right there in front of you. He says, I want you to do good, and by that he means be rich in good works. Be rich in good deeds. Take the time to show care. Take the time to love. Be rich in good deeds. That's what he says. That's a practice. That's a practice. And we have opportunities left and right all day to be rich in good deeds. He says something else in addition to being rich in good deeds. He says, be generous and willing to share. Not grudgingly, not such a tight fist that we have to pry it open, but willing to share. And on the back of all of this, remember now, is this conviction that there is a present age and there's an age to come. Don't forget that. And we're going somewhere. So the practice is be rich in good deeds, be generous, and willing to share. There's another practice that is not in the text. I'm going to add it. It's a free book. This past week I read in our devotional that we have been using for this journey, this next 40 days or so. It was a devotional for Tuesday, and there was something in there about building nest. Anybody remember that? Reading Building Nest? It was a powerful story. Here is a man who wrote this devotion, and he says that it's about spring, sometime in March, April, and he says he begins to see birds flying about. Some are carrying big sticks, some are carrying small sticks, they're carrying twigs. And what are the birds doing? They are building their nests. The birds are building their nests. And they are building their nests because of what is coming. They're getting ready to hatch these eggs, then they'll watch over these little animals, their little babies. And so the springtime is a busy time for nesting, for building the egg, for building the nests. And the author says, sometimes when we talk about building nests among human beings, we talk about we are pretty well situated. And somebody has an awesome job and it's pretty cushy and pretty good. You might say, it looks like you built yourself by the nest here, don't you? So when we talk about nest building, we're talking about self-preserving. Pretty much, you're doing good for yourself. The birds, though. The birds build the nest, not for themselves. The birds always build a nest for the generation that is to come. For the generation that is to come. They never build a nest for themselves. So let me just throw it out. As a church, the kinds of nests that we build, are they just for ourselves? My own comfort, my preferences, where I like to sit? No, I don't sit there, I gotta sit here. It's at this time, no, it's not at this time, it's that time. No. The nests that we build, are they just for us? Or are they for the generation that is to come? What kind of nests as a church are we building? Why is it a good idea, Paul says? Why is it a good idea to engage in this practice of being good, of doing good, of being generous, of being willing to share, even of building a nest for the generation to come? Here's a secret. Because there's an age to come. And Paul says, when we engage in these practices, God uses the raw material of our generosity to do something inside of us. Did you hear that? God is working on your heart and my heart and uses the raw material of our kindness and our generosity to do something inside of us which we cannot do for ourselves. And that's what Paul calls a good foundation for the age to come. Now, how many of you know Noah Lingerford? Noah, where are you? There he is. There you go. Noah is a little bit older than 2 years old. Do you know that Noah is starting to work on names for dinosaurs? Now that's a good foundation. That's a good foundation. When children show up at school, we expect and hope that somebody at home has laid what? A good foundation, right? ABCs are in place, colors are in place, shapes are in place, they are talking well. You build on that stuff. Ready to learn, let's go. Paul says in the same way, in the age to come, one of the ways you can lay a good foundation is to be kind and generous in the present. Give God something to work with. Something about our heart to work with. I made a phone call this past week to a couple of churches in our town. How many of you know that we do not have a children's ministry at Pittsburgh? You're aware that we don't have a children's ministry at Pittsburgh? Jim raised his hand. People think Jim is a children's ministry. He's not. We had a children's minister many, many years ago. And that person was Noonoo. And she served for 8 years. And then she said, I'm going to step away. Do you remember when 40 kids used to come forward? Remember? After church, people used to tell me, gosh, 40 little ones came forward today. I was counting. Very impressive. We don't have a children's ministry. We don't have one. PCRC, Cindy, you're part of it. Darlene, where are you? You're part of it. You guys are working on finding a children's minister for Pittsburgh. We're talking about building a nest for whom? Building a nest for the next generation. So we've been working on this for a while. I made a couple of calls this past week. What is the starting salary for children's ministers in our community? $37,000 for the year, plus $400 a month for insurance. Do you know how much money we have set aside for children's ministry at this present? $6,000. We are hoping to get a quarter-time children's minister for $6,000, and it's not working. It will not work. It will not work. May I challenge you today to think about building a nest for the next generation? Let's think about a half-time position for children's ministry. Something in the neighborhood of $15,000. We already have 6. All we need is what? $9,000 for the year? Not because it's cute to have it come forward, but because the mandate of Jesus is to go out there and to share the good news of his love with others. And it starts with whom? Our own children. Right here. Right here. So I challenge you to learn from the birds and build a nest for the future. I challenge you today, as we talk about generosity, to do good, to put your trust and your hope in God, to be generous and willing to share. Let us pray. Holy God, we are pulled and torn in so many ways in our lives. Every once in a while, it is good to